Okay, so today, so just a few days later after I did my other video, it's the 14th today, April 14th, and doing another video. I'm just doing these videos in quiet places that are safe because there's a lot of crazy things going on in South Dakota right now. I'm mostly exposing some things in South Dakota right now, and um, I do have more to expose about what happened at the Arizona National Guard. If you saw any of my first videos, I was a huge whistleblower at the military whistleblower at the Arizona National Guard, and you can Google that story. I was on Daniel Lee's channel, Arizona National Guard whistleblower. But then I've done another video with Laura Hubble after that, and we started exposing things that were direct links from Arizona to South Dakota. So, and then I've been contacted by a lot of people in South Dakota, so I'm continuing more the exposure of the South Dakota right now, and because that's where I live, and and it's something that needs to be addressed, and it's something that hardly anybody knows is going on, and so Laura put me in contact with a guy named Paul Register, and Laura Hubble. If you saw her video, she was also on Daniel Lee with me a few weeks ago, and she worked at the South Dakota legislature for a couple of years, and she ran for governor, and she exposed a lot of things, a lot of corruption that is very serious that's going on in South Dakota that hardly anybody knows about because it's never made it to the media because they squash it, and and I think that has a lot to do with the people at the top that are involved and the seriousness of what it is. And so I'm gonna this guy named Paul Register agreed to talk to me on the phone about what he was basically a witness to several things that happened. And Laura Hubble had talked about um, murders that there was never a thorough investigation, and Paul Register also has similar stories. This is really, really scary stuff. And so I feel, we all feel like, we're coming together and finally get a chance to tell more people in the world about what's been going on in South Dakota. And everybody thinks of it as just this rural hunting area, but there's been a lot of things that people need to know that's been going on here that are terrifying. And I had no idea when I moved here. So, maybe I was led here to help expose that, like I exposed in Arizona. I don't know. But I know that, and people, they ask me, why I'm doing this, and first of all, I didn't plan on being a whistleblower. Nobody plans on being a whistleblower. You just accidentally end up seeing something, and if you have any kind of moral conscience, you uh, feel like you need to say something, and that's just normal human nature. And for anybody to, put down whistleblowers in any way, I mean, we are the ones who are helping save this country more than anybody. Certainly not the fake news. So, and it says right in Ephesians 5, have nothing to do with the darkness, but rather expose them. So, I'm just going to put that out there. And then it also says, um, for faith without works is dead, in James 2:26. So, you can't just, there's people praying, and we're praying, and there's a lot of people praying, but you also have to act on some things. There has to be more people that act on to try to expose what's been going on. If you see something, there has to be more people um, that aren't afraid. There has to be more people that stand up because it's still there's still a lot of really critical things going on in our country. So anyway, I'm going to call Paul Register now, and he's going to tell his story, which is just unbelievable, of what he's seen in South Dakota, and what he's tried to say, and then he didn't get anywhere. So I'm going to put it on speaker, and so we're going to try to listen to his story just this way. Hopefully he'll pick up. He knows I'm about to call.
Call registered.
Okay, hold on. Let me try calling him back because he knows I'm trying to call. We had this scheduled, so I just was running late, so hopefully we can get a hold of him. But basically, if you know anything about, there's a story. There was a murder in South Dakota, just a little bit west of, or no, east of Aberdeen, called Andover, Andover, South Dakota, and it was a woman that was shot in the head.
Call registered.
Okay, all right, hold on. I'll have to text him and say I'm trying to call you. Okay, so anyway, he knows about the there was a lady who was shot in the head, and then they did a fire, and he has the story of or he has he knew this woman before, and she was a she had been reporting a huge crime at a certain facility in South Dakota, and he has the story on that. So let's see if we can get him on the phone. I don't know. If not, I can just stop this, and then once I get him on the phone, I can upload it. I'll try to call him one more time. But basically, he has the story on that as well as other things in South Dakota. So I'll try to call him one more time. And if I can't get a hold of him, then I'll just stop this and try calling him, and then I'll re-upload.
Call red.
Okay, well, anyway, we'll get him on the phone. I'll just stop this for now, and then once I get a hold of him, I'll re-upload this interview. Okay, because it's really interesting because um, if you Google Andover fire in South Dakota, this is the story that he has information to, and he's going to talk about it as well as some other things that he was witness to in South Dakota. Um, there was another huge fire, and Laura Hubble talked on this, and that was it. It was in Platte, South Dakota, and 6 people lost their lives, a whole family, and there was, oh, there he is. Okay, so, okay, there you are. Yeah, are you okay to do this now? I know I was running late.
Um, can you give me about 3 minutes? Because I gotta drive home. I like kind of was
Okay.
sitting there waiting.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I'll give you the 3 minutes. Yep. Okay, just call me.
Okay, I will.
I'm just doing a preview to your interview here. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
All right. Bye. Okay, so he basically there was a whole family murdered, and it was really suspicious the way that they did the investigation in Platte, South Dakota, and they he said that the same fire chief that did the investigation in Platte, the Platte fire, drove 3 hours to do the investigation in Andover. Okay, so why would somebody, and he thought that was suspicious because, why wouldn't just the local fire department do an investigation? No, it had to be this same guy that did the Platte investigation, that did the, the final determination on the cause of the fire in Andover. See, this is what Laura Hubble was touching on, is that it's all this system of people that cover for each other, and also it hit home for me, about a year ago when there was a death and a fire right in my town where I live. There was a man killed who was a friend of mine, killed right in Long Lake, South Dakota. It's about an hour from Aberdeen, and his name was Jimmy Kolb, an hour northwest of Aberdeen. And his name was Jimmy Kolb, and he was a friend of mine, and he had talked about, because I hadn't lived there that long, and he had talked about, told me about certain things that were going on, but we didn't know exactly what was going on. We thought it might have been a lot of traffic through town, and we thought it might have been, drug related. Okay, and apparently somebody said that, they thought that Jimmy might have known too much, and they fully believe that that is what caused his death. And I was there in the town and the day that it happened, and I was woken up at 5 o'clock with firefighters, going by my house, and they it took them 6 hours to get the body out. Okay, and I had just, I thought that was unbelievable how long it took them to get the body out. And then Jimmy was at my house all the time. He was helping me with projects and all kinds of different things. And um, the local sheriff never asked me any questions. And then when I went to go question the local sheriff, who I completely do not trust at all, um, he said that he just blew me off, and he said that he had sent the investigation off to DCI, or state police. And so then we thought the state police was going to come out and question and do an actual investigation. Nobody ever came out. Nobody ever came out to Long Lake. Um, the family of Jimmy Kolb still has unresolved questions that were never answered about his what caused his death. They tried to say that, he just they tried to make up a story, basically, that, it must have been a wood furnace. Well, he didn't have a wood furnace, so good luck with that one. He had a oil burning furnace. The people that knew him downstairs, and then they tried to change the story and said, oh, well, it must have been the oil burning furnace then downstairs. And then, okay, the problem with that story is that, when we went to go look at the house, there was no fire downstairs. It was just upstairs where he died, where the fire was. There was um, no, no sign of fire in the basement where they said the supposed fire must have started. And the state police keep changing their story, and still to this day we've never gotten any kind of resolve. A year and a half later, it was November 17th. I'm sorry, November in the end of November in 2017 that he died in the morning. And still to this day, we had a memorial service, but they still to this day have never fully released the body to the family. Okay, so I mean, I've told this story to some, people who work in law enforcement and different things like that, and that's the main key factor that really freaks people out. That doesn't make any sense at all. Is that here we are a year and a half later, and they still haven't released the body. I mean, if you normally, they said normally, if they still have any kind of reason to still do some kind of investigation. They keep the body maybe for a few months and do all the final testing, but nobody has ever heard of keeping a body for a year and a half. Okay, so this is really, really scary. What's going on with with these fires. And also in our town, there was a couple other issues with this guy who my neighbors have been who've told me about, that has committed all these crimes. And there was a very unusual fire of the church years ago. Um, that was really unexplainable. And it didn't seem like there was any kind of real investigation of that. And then there was, somebody got the contract to rebuild rebuild the church. So, there's a lot of really scary things going on. He has a lot more information. Oh, jeez, my phone here. He tried calling. Okay, here we go. I didn't hear the phone. Okay, so I'm just gonna let him talk mostly now. Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I didn't hear the phone for some reason. Okay, sorry about. Okay, but I did a preview of kind of what we talked about and how there's all these really unexplained fires, and they don't seem to do any real investigations. I told them about the one. I just went over the one in Long Lake, and then I told them how you know about the one in Andover, and that there was the same fire marshal came all the way from Platte to do the okay. So I I I'm just gonna let you talk, about what you know, and so I'm just recording it, and then I'm gonna upload it onto YouTube. So whatever you feel, um, you know, like you want to touch on, because you have a lot of stuff like Laura did.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Okay, so just go ahead, like what you know about the Andover fire, how that lady, you knew she was revealing some things about that organization in South Dakota.
Yeah, essentially what it was is that I've been doing an investigation on a facility that I learned about through there was abuse going on, and a mutual or a friend that I had put me in touch with a gal that she knew whose son had been abused there, and so upon learning about this, I began digging into this abuse at this facility, and the more that I got into it, I started learning a bunch of different names, and on one interesting thing was when a couple different staff members both were like very adamant. It's like, have you talked to this gal about what she dealt with when she was a resident there? And that
And what was this?
happened.
And what was this facility, Paul?
This was at the Auroura Plains Academy.
Okay, Auroura Plains. In where?
In Plankington, South Dakota.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And so it so happens that this person that they kept telling me about was a gal by the name of Tawny Rockwood. And so that was interesting. And through a series of unusual events, we'll just say, I became compelled to, because of how all this kind of dumped in my lap, Tawny was the only one that I sought out to get on video what happened with her, because one thing that was coming up is they kept naming the same staff, like numerous people were naming the same staff over and over as the perpetrators of the abuse. And in this particular instance, everybody, I knew Tawny had to be different based on the kind of different feedback I was getting from people and whatnot.
She was a threat.
Tawny was one of the ones that was abused there.
Okay,
so I was just basically collecting all different testimonies. And she was one of the ones.
And so what do you mean by abused? How were these people abused there?
Like physically abused, like improper restraints, and like in the case with Tawny, she after seeking her out, I met her in it would have been, I think, October of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it was with I wanted to get her voice of what happened with her while she was there. I had numerous people saying they were hurt by the staff at this facility, or they had different, like their medications were ramped up through the roof.
And she was how old was she?
She was would have been 15 when she was at this facility. It's basically
Okay.
with Auroura Plains Academy. It's a like youth correctional. It's a
Okay, it's
private
a youth
company.
correctional. Yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
were saying, and then a lot of the youth ended up being abused. Okay.
yeah, yep, yep. And so uh, I finally located her and made it a point to drive to meet her. I can't really remember. I think that would have been October 2016. And so I went and visited with her and taped her testimony of what went on. And so I was just basically, that's how I came to know Tawny. I only met her on the one occasion,
Mhm.
but she knew that I was trying to bring to light the abuse that took place at this facility,
Mhm.
and that it wasn't just her. It's like I had a dozen people over the course of 8 to 10 years time frame that were all saying the same thing. Different people there at different times says this is just continued over and over and over, and I know it's still going on to this day because I met with a mother uh, recently who has a son there that she went to a Facebook page where some of these people have come forward and was like, my son's there now. How do I get help? And so we've been trying to put together the effort to tell their story of what happened there. So Tawny was just one of
Well,
the ones. She just
I'm gonna upload this video after we talk, so hopefully, it'll bring to light some things with this video too.
yeah
And and you said something about how it's all about they get more money for totally overly medicating these people,
oh
the
yeah. I
kids.
mean
Yeah,
it's
see
like
that it's like a
yeah. I mean this is all just
they get more money to overly medicate them,
yeah. It's basically just I mean there's no
the
like
kids.
yeah. It's just incentive because it's like I mean it's all Medicare related. So, um, like the more that they can put onto these kids, they're gonna. I mean, there's not gonna be any. That I mean, there'll be some like it's not just done completely haphazardly, but at the same time, like one of the kids that I talked to was saying that he wasn't on any medications when he got there, and they put him on 4 different medications. And I can't recall those at the time, but he literally, and he was a like well-spoken kid,
Mhm.
and has gone on to become a brick mason. So I mean, he's made good out of his life,
Hey,
but during the time that
how long do they normally stay there?
it could be anywhere from like 6 months to quite a few years.
Okay, so it depends on
Yeah,
like it's a correctional, so it depends on how long
yeah, exactly.
okay.
And so with this particular kid, like no meds when he got there, got put on 4, and he was saying it's like I had to have staff literally pick me up off the floor to put me into bed. And so
That's how overly medicated he was.
yeah, yep, yep, and
Oh
that
my God.
came back on a couple different occasions that was the case, and so I'm certain that that still continues, but at the with the situation with Tawny, she was bringing up this abuse pertinent to specific staff, and she was like, uh, she was able to show me like everybody that was put in restraints there would always get these floor burns, and she had this tattoo that she had done specifically to cover up this lengthy scar that she had from these rug burns on her arm, but the one that she was uh, like able to tell the story the most was she was targeted by this staff because she got her it was inadvertent. They were doing calisthenics and she got her finger slammed in the door, so they took her to the Plankington clinic and to get her finger lanced, and supposedly both male staff were in the front seat and she was in the back on the way there, but one of these staff, according to her, sat in the back with her on the way back, and on the drive back, like he wrote her hand up her leg, and
Mhm.
she went bananas, and basically this guy was instructed to not be near her,
Mhm.
and so and Tawny was one that she stuck up for a lot of these other kids, and oftentimes she was recruited because some of the kids she was with weren't as high functioning per se, and
Mhm.
so if they were in the midst of like an outburst, a lot of times the staff would like utilize Tawny to help bring the kid back in, so they didn't have these specific uh, staff who all they did was deal with interventions. When those guys showed up, that's when all hell would break loose, and these kids would like it would go from like possible de-escalation where you're trying to talk them down to instant holds, and that's when the abuse really kicked into gear, according to numerous people that I've talked to. This particular occasion, this guy had specific instructions not to like be within so far of Tawny, and the group was called for a different behavior specific to this dorm, and Tawny was in the doorway and telling this guy, it's like, you can't be here if I'm here, and so you can't cross the threshold into the dorm. And according to her, that's when he grabs her arm and pulls her out of the door, and then throws her face down on concrete into one of these holes. And so, and there was,
so she was
yeah,
more abused because she would stand up for people, and she
yeah,
was
and she
was
understood
more,
that, yeah,
and she wasn't really disabled. She was just there for correctional or whatever.
yeah,
And so she probably could be a threat to them, I guess. And but
yeah, and she
anyway,
actually
so
says
who
that she was,
I was just gonna tell people. So this is the woman that ended up dead in Andover, Tawny.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
so
So this is I just want to make that point. And how old was she when she ended up dead in Andover?
25.
Okay. So she's 10 years later.
Yeah,
She
this
was
is 10
still
years down
a
the road, and
threat.
so yeah,
And
and
what
basically with
she
what happened with, it's really interesting because what happened with Plankington, not really that related with Andover. What ended up happening is Tawny went on with her life after she left there, and like so many, they've said it's like as soon as I got out of there, my life instantly got better. But so Tawny goes on, and she ends up having two daughters. Um, I think two different fathers, but like the one thing I want to like make certain is like I'm not trying to project Tawny as a saint, and she wouldn't want me to. It's like she was a very very honest woman, and so it's like I mean she would tell you the worst aspects about her just so she would be upfront about it. And so it's like I mean, and that's like I've talked to other people who have said that. It's like, but Tawny had been in placements for so much of her life that like standard behavior
was she a
was not.
foster child or something,
No,
or
she just I mean she had been
she
in
just
placements.
like correctional type stuff?
Yeah, corrections
Okay.
or yeah, different group homes throughout the state. And so she'd been like since she was really young, and so like a lot of the like standard upbringing that a lot of us, I mean, she really didn't have any of that, and so so I mean, but she ended up where she had two daughters, and I don't care what anybody else says. I saw her with these kids. She was an excellent mother. She absolutely doted on both these daughters of hers, and it's like so, like to try and I mean to if they have any kind of dispute against that, it's like I saw firsthand myself how she was and how much these kids enjoyed her, and so
So
the
I
kicker
mean,
was
so okay, well go ahead. But I was mostly I'm mostly just trying to expose how how it was kind of weird how she ended up dead, and then how didn't you say that the guy's court case is coming up who they think killed her, but you don't think he's the one who killed her, and neither
no,
do I. Neither do I. They're trying to apparently they're trying to say that her boyfriend, somebody named Rodriguez,
yeah,
is the suspect, but nobody thinks that that's true. And you said that they silenced like 7 witnesses or something.
yeah. Basically, like to make a long story short, for many months I didn't hear much from Tawny. Occasionally I would update her with like, I'm trying to get this story. We were actually very close with one of the local newspapers about getting the story about the abuse at this facility, but the uh, like the month before this story was supposed to hit, the reporter pulled the plug on his career at the Argus Leader, and he says it's like South Dakota only goes 90% with the stories. That last 10% is the stories they don't tell the public. And so
yeah, that's what I've seen so far. Yeah.
Yeah, and so him being from out of state, and he won awards for his journalism here in South Dakota, but it was evident that they weren't going to push these types of stories, and a lot of them focus around Native Americans. And so,
okay.
Yeah, so with what happened with Tawny, I had her like like she had spoken with this guy, and so this thing was really close. But he eventually, like a month before it happened, had to pull the plug on his career, and so, but he's kind of helped me in other ways to like reach out to other entities that might be better suited for the story about Auroura Plains. And so as this continued on, like I don't hear from Tawny all that often, and some of her like I said, it's like Tawny wasn't a saint by any means. She was a stripper up in Aberdeen.
Okay.
And so it's like, I mean, so she just was making ends
but
meet.
That doesn't mean she deserved to die. I mean,
no,
that's
not by a long shot.
Yeah, so exactly. So it's like, I mean,
Yeah. And so the real interesting part was like was she reached out to me. There had been a story in the Aberdeen paper about it just mentions a guy raping a 5-year-old, and so it says it's in this town Andover, and I can't remember if it was how long it was between, but like and so it's like I learned of this rape that had taken place and didn't think anything of it, but then a week and a half later, Tawny begins reaching out to me, and she's basically telling me the story of his name is Gary Thars, Thares, and he was a neighbor who lived in the fourplex building where she was at, who they befriended, lived down the hall, and her daughters would go over and help him cook eggs and hamburgers and different stuff like that. And so, I mean, he kind of was an adopted friend, so to speak. And Tawny, like, she probably had like wanted to like trust the best in people, and that's, I mean, this guy basically, I don't know the full details, but ended up on rape charges for raping Tawny's 5-year-old daughter. And so this
just a whole mess of problems in her life.
Yeah, and so it's like, I mean, so this situation takes place, and she tells me, like, asked me if I had heard. I said, I read something in the paper, and that's when she begins to tell me that it was a week and a half later. Here we have Child Protective Services knocking on her door, like basically pressuring her, and it's like it's with the intent of taking her kids from her, and it's like she wasn't in any kind of relationship with this guy. Oh,
because somebody raped her. Oh, like it's her fault.
Yeah, and so it's like, I mean, they basically started targeting her because of this guy down the hall who they had befriended raping her 5-year-old. And so
yeah, there's a lot of really weird stuff going on with Child Protective Services.
This guy gets ordered to where he can't be in Dade County, South Dakota anymore. So he's out of the picture, but suddenly she messages me and is telling me all this, and she goes into details about, like, basically they put her in a psych hold for a day, and she basically jumped through all the hoops necessary with every intention of like trying to get this squared away to get her kids back. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, and like, so the
Yeah,
kicker,
and why would they put her in a second? Because her kid got raped.
yeah,
I
basically
mean,
they were trying to
that's ridiculous.
make it
They're
where she was an
somehow
unfit mother.
negligent or
Yeah,
yeah. Mhm.
and
I'd
the
be
thing that she had, like, she told me this flat out. She's like, the reason that they gave her was that, quote, she didn't have proper family support.
oh that
She was a single
like
mom.
she's the only single mom in the whole
Yeah,
country.
exactly. And so it's
Like
like,
there's a
but she
lot of
didn't have
single
proper.
moms that don't have family support.
Yeah, she.
Wake up, government.
Yeah. So
Wake up,
so
South
basically,
Dakota.
that's what she ended up telling me. And so I mean, I learned of this, and I reached out to a reporter who had done some stories with me from the Aberdeen paper, and she got a like the rundown of everything, and those two corresponded for a bit, and it was I think it was uh, New Year's Eve of 2018 where that reporter Shannon Marvel did a wonderful story about how like the kind of like what Tawny was putting up with to try and get her kids back prior
Hmm.
to her being murdered. And so, I mean, the story was in
Oh
the
my
Aberdeen
God.
paper at the tail end of this last year about everything that she was doing, and so they had corresponded at different point in time, and so a lot of the materials from that, and it was the front page story of the Aberdeen.
Everything is just very very suspicious. You know,
Yeah,
like her whole like all this turmoil. How she seemed like she was just in couldn't get out of the system and couldn't get out of this mess, and then
yeah,
she ends up dead.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
it
And so
sounds
it's like,
very fishy. And I had heard about the story in the paper, but I didn't know anything about this, so that's why we're doing this. But then um, s- some of the other things that I mean, you were touching on how because I was making all these links to in my first videos that with because Senator John McCain was very good friends with Senator Thune and Senator Rounds, and um, I know that what I uncovered in Arizona was same kind of stuff going on at CPS, but no, I uncovered stuff going on in the Arizona National Guard, but there's similar things going on with CPS where they're just trying to take people's kids away. So there's for no reason. They're just
yeah,
and so there's a lot of links between South Dakota and Arizona, and I particularly think that it has to do with the people on the top of the people in
oh
the
yeah,
high positions, and you said you thought it had to do with Bush too.
oh yeah.
Why
Basically,
do you think that?
and the reason I say that is because when I kind of got the full scale explanation of what all is going on, I basically found a link on YouTube, uh, a story called South Dakota Exposed, and Daniel Sheehan, he's a lawyer for the Lakota Law Project, I think it is, and he
Okay.
did this. He did this wonderful like video. It's a 10-minute video of him explaining like basically how they created an algorithm in Texas that they utilized to declare Native Americans as disabled in some facet by through these tests that they force them to take.
Oh
And so once
wow.
they declare them disabled, they're able to make money by like through foster care and whatnot. And according to, like I was watching this video with a coworker, and he indicated that for each child, the state gets like 79 grand, and this was 2001, so 79 grand per child
They get
for, yeah,
they get money to do what? To make
basically
them
like
to make them disabled. I mean to label
basically
them.
put them into foster care or put them into institutions,
Okay.
and so basically this is all just a big draw from Medicaid, and so these kids are pulled from their homes and put into foster care, and each each kid that puts in, one thing that's unique about South Dakota is that like I learned this from one of the parents parents who had a child who was put into Auroura Plains that they received like a monthly stipend for each foster kid, and they receive that until they're 18, and also I believe they get like a Medicare card, and it's like this isn't done like the
I've never
report
heard
that
of that happening in any other state. Yeah.
yeah
Oh, wow. That is
yeah, and so it's like
crazy.
I sit around here and it's like I look at like I can think of a couple different friends that I have, and they were friends long before this ever started, and it's like suddenly I'm looking and it's like, and these people don't realize it's like they're doing a wonderful thing by taking these foster kids into their homes in majority of the cases,
Mhm.
and it's like that they are literally trying to become a family for these kids, but what
Mhm.
they don't realize is that the state is using their kindness. They're exploiting the kindness of these people because they may be getting like assistance to help like raise these kids, but the state is getting so much more over the top of it that it's become a business for them. The first year
Mhm.
that they did this, according to
It's sick. Yeah, yeah.
the first year that they did this, according to Daniel Sheehan's video, they said it was 741 kids were removed from their homes and put in the system. And you add that up to 79 grand per kid. My
Oh my
coworker,
gosh.
like instantly, he wrote it down. It's like that was $58 million that just goes into the Department of Social Services budget, and we don't have a ethics commission or anybody really doing significant audits to
Oh,
go in and look
wow.
into this stuff. So that money just gets dispersed. However,
Yeah, yeah, it has everything to do with the money. See, and this is
yeah,
when I talked to that guy the other day, they said it sounds like a total statewide public corruption situation.
yeah, yeah. And so
Mhm.
it's like, I mean, and the weird thing is like, so Tawny like reaches out to me, and in amongst, I mean, she's basically, uh, she's very like thorough in as far as her explanations, and then like, so she basically says, I know that they're basically doing this, waiting for me to quote fuck up, and so
Mhm.
they're basically pressuring her, and she says it's like, I'm trying to use her words. She
Yeah,
basically
no,
was,
it's okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and she basically was saying it's like they basically, my daughter was raped and they take them away a week and a half later. How the fuck do they not expect me to go crazy?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you're the crazy
Yeah,
one because you took my kids away. Yeah, anybody would
yeah,
be mad. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
And so but
it's yeah, when I was became a whistleblower, they did the same kind of games with me in the military. When you are a threat to them, they play games with you in any way that they can. And
yeah,
so same kind of thing. They use intimidation tactics and yeah, and just they want you to screw up so they can do something else to you. Yeah.
oh yeah. And so it's
Yeah,
like,
so
and so
but
with this
you
whole
were
thing,
but you think it's all a money thing. I mean,
oh yeah. I
like
mean
it's all
basically
linked to the
when you look
money
at
that a
yeah,
lot of these people are getting under the table, these corrupt politicians and different.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think so.
so basically what it is like it was basically so they could target the two daughters, and the two daughters were never given back to the father. Not the father, like they were not given to either father, but even Tawny's father, like never given back to her father. Instead, they went to a foster home of a 60-year-old Caucasian woman in Hayti, South Dakota. And so,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying anything bad against that lady. I've never met her, but
Mhm.
that completely violates the Indian Care Welfare Act. I mean,
Mm.
Connie was like she explained in our interview that she was basically affiliated with three different tribes. Uh,
Oh,
I,
was she Native American?
oh yeah,
Oh, okay, you didn't say that. Yeah. And you know what I forgot to ask you is that can you tell who you are and how you know all this information? Just a little bit about
oh
yourself. I forgot to tell you
yeah,
in
and
the beginning.
well, I'm Paul Register, and basically I just make a long story short, I was an employee of the South Dakota Developmental Center
Okay,
uh,
that's right.
in in Redfield, and when a bunch of different things like the facility where I worked, we had so many staff getting hurt, and so much stuff that was so unexplained that it's like I basically went and blew the whistle on that facility because
You
there was
just like kind of what happened with me. I mean, you just couldn't morally not
yeah
say anything.
yeah
Nobody purposely tries to be a whistleblower. That's what makes me so mad. How whistleblowers, have this,
yeah
like, I mean, it's just been living hell for whistleblowers for years,
yeah
and it has
yeah
to stop because anybody that has any kind of right moral compass in their, in their, I mean, it would say something about some of this not stuff. I mean, you would have to be a bad person not to say something, in
yeah.
my
So
opinion,
just to give you kind of perspective, it's like through a 2 month time span, just in the program area I worked, we had 55 staff that weren't like not on the overnights because the overnights never saw the clientele under any circumstances really. They were just kind of there, but the the evening and the day staff that dealt with them, we had roughly about 55 direct care staff. In the span of 2 months, we had five staff suffer concussions, and
oh
one
my
ended up
God.
with a laceration like by his eye that they had to glue shut because it was too close to his eye to do any sutures. So that was one of the deals. The other one was that uh, I was part of a situation where we had this case manager come over to the office, and I was just like, I was not like a licensed counselor. Basically, I was kind of like I was able to do like different groups, and like where he would teach them like daily living skills and like kind of more social skills, different stuff like that. So, like I didn't have any kind of like master's degree. I have a degree in psychology, and so basically this this case manager comes over, and he's not one to bug us much. So when he's like, we have a counselor meeting, and we're like, sure.
Mhm.
He's like, I just got this email, and it basically indicates that the behavior therapist for this guy who had a vicious history,
Mhm.
including like he sexually like he when he was 14, he got sent out of the facility because he came out of his room when he was isolated with a 6-year-old female staff and
Mhm.
wrapped a Nintendo cord around her neck, pulled her to the ground, and beat her with a handheld radio, all
And,
with the intention of raping her.
uh, and this
And
is
so
in what? And where is this facility located?
this is in Redfield.
Redfield is where you work.
Yeah.
Development
Yep.
in Redfield,
So
South Dakota. Okay.
yeah, and so basically, this was the guy that like here's this documentation from the mother or like from the behavior therapist of this same kid who ended up coming back to the mother saying I gave him a pocket knife because he was getting ready to go on a home visit. But she gave him this pocket knife and he's walking around the campus with it. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. And so me and the guy who I shared an office with, we devised this plan. It's like we had these incentive cards, and we found a $10 incentive cards to one of the local convenience stores, and we devised this plan to have him come over because we actually, when we first started there, we were like direct care, and he was one of our 8 kids that we had back when we started in 2001. So we're like,
Mhm.
maybe if we got his shot, it's like you and I are the best options because he's worked. I mean, he's known us forever, and
Mhm.
so we devised this plan to have him come over and meet with us and say, look, this isn't your fault, but obviously you can't have the pocket knife, and
Yeah.
just as a gesture of good faith, uh, we'll give you this $10 gift card just for coughing it up. And he's like, okay. So it was an easy exchange. We
Oh,
had
good for you.
we had
Yeah.
3 staff in a room next door with the door shut should anything have gone awry, and we kind of had a good feeling that it wouldn't, but at the same time, you have this situation right next door, and you like I still have the email where basically the behavior therapist admits giving the knife to this guy. That was part of the what I went public about when I was on uh, news station.
Mhm.
And the crazy part was the fact that first order after a situation like that happens is that every person would go into the human rights specialist, and everybody would be interviewed to decide what disciplinary action would take place. So we had the 5 staff that dealt with it, and then obviously the person who gave the knife would have been one to go in. At no point in time were any of us ever called in for that investigation.
Wow. That doesn't make any sense.
So there was a lot of stuff, and so
Okay.
I actually went around campus, and this was around Thanksgiving in 2015, and got out of 300 staff, I got 88 staff signatures, basically saying it's an unsafe workplace, and the director at the time is largely to blame. And after I went public, that like basically it was me versus her, kind of sparred it out on TV, even though we were in separate interviews. But within a month and a half of me going on TV and then her subsequent interviews, she was let go. But the state says, oh, she chose to retire on her own. It's like it was.
Yeah, they make up these stories when really it's just when she got exposed, so she's just gonna go away now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. But as Tawny's situation kind of came about, make a long story short, I went to a gas station one day and I saw this newspaper, and the headline reads "Body Unaccounted for in Andover Fire." And so when I saw that, it didn't like my immediate thought was, well, maybe it's that son of a bitch that raped her kid. Maybe it was that guy. I didn't know the details of really.
Right, that's what you were thinking at first,
yeah,
right?
I ended up coming home and was heading to work later in the day. I'm flipping around on Facebook, and all of a sudden I see this picture of Tawny with someone who had kind of been like a mother to her, who I have spoken with on a time or two, and the caption was something like, "This is the last picture we ever took together." And it's like instantly, it's like, oh my gosh, it was her. And so, like,
and that's when you realized that was her that was murdered.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So my instincts have served me incredibly well throughout this whole process. And one of the things that I chose to do was I was like, the next day I'm going up to Andover, which is about 30 miles east of Aberdeen. So I went up there, not knowing anybody, but lo and behold, I ended up talking to some folks that, like, some of the firefighters that were there, and it was at this moment I was explaining how I'd seen all this deception by the state of South Dakota throughout the process and whatnot. And when I said, when you think of what's going on down there, think of the situation in Platte, South Dakota. And Platte, South Dakota refers to what is known as the Gear Up scandal, where a gentleman by the name of Scott Westerhouse, supposedly, he and his wife supposedly embezzled millions of dollars through a Native American co-op, educational co-op.
That was the one that happened in Platte.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laura was telling that story. Yeah.
He shoots his family in the back of the head and burns the house to the ground.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I thought the similarity between Tawny's situation, where shot in the back of the head, burns house to the ground. It's like that's a bit too close. And so as I'm talking to these firefighters, I'm like, when you think of what's going on down there, because DCI was at the location doing all their investigation and cleanup and everything like that.
What did some of the firefighters say? What were their comments?
As soon as I said, when you think of what's going on down there, think of Platte, instantly the firefighters in the room stopped and they're like, it was in chorus basically, they're like, he was here. I'm like, who was here? And I go, and then these guys go, the Platte fire marshal came up to be a part of this investigation. And then it's like, the unique thing about that is Platte is 3 hours from Andover.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning it right before I had you on the phone. Okay, yeah, and that doesn't, So this is all, this is, Laura was, it's just, it's all coming together, like there's certain people involved in cover-ups.
Oh, yeah.
And
so this and
Yeah, and it's frightening. I mean, that I
Yeah.
had never, nobody I had ever knew South Dakota was so bad until
Oh well.
recently, until a couple of the videos now have come out. I mean, there's only just a very few people. I always thought South Dakota was just this rural
And
place
that's
to
what
go
everybody
hunting.
thinks.
Yeah, rural place to go hunting. That but people watch out, man. There's a lot of really weird
Yeah.
things going
And
on
so
here, and I mean, I had no idea, and this is really scary for me to even do these videos. But
yeah.
in my experience, it's better to expose
Yeah.
than because if you're not a known person,
Mhm.
they can get away with like getting rid of you somehow. But if
Oh
you
yeah.
if you expose who you are and what you know to the
Yeah. The
world,
more public you
the
are,
more
the less
public you
likely.
are, the more safe in my experience. So that's why I'm doing this video. And
Yeah.
this just has to, people have to know what's going on here. I feel like it's really important. I feel like it's not just a statewide issue. It just is an example of what's going on in the whole country with CPS, with these
Yeah.
our out of control government that is so corrupt. It's unbelievable. Before Trump, I'm not talking about Trump. He's
Yeah.
trying to clean everything up, but it's just what the evil that they were
Yeah.
involved in, and
And so
with these
and
kids
so
and everything. It's just plays into, and it's one of the, and why he's trying to stop all these things with child trafficking and everything at the border. I mean, because it's a total attack on the children in America
yeah. And so
in
with
every
with
way.
the
It's like in the correction homes, and then they end up like in taken away from parents, and then some of them end up kidnapped. It's a total attack on the children of our America.
oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this
And
is
so
what it's all about. It's like, I mean, they're desperately trying to like get kids away from their parents with CPS. They're shooting them up with all kinds of stuff, trying to call them, crazy, trying to label them so they can, and it's all about control, in my opinion. It's all
yeah.
about control. Our government, our corrupt government prior to Trump, they're all about control. They want to control and dumb us down, and that's the name of the game that they were
Yeah.
into.
And so with a lot of the stuff, like ever since the Tawny thing took place, it's like I've been on the heels of this. Like within 5 days after it happened, it's like I had all this confirmation from the firefighters, and so basically through everything, it's like I began to like talk to different people, and I learned how to go and retrieve like court documents from our local courthouse. Go to the kiosk, and basically for 20 cents a page, you can start getting whatever documents aren't sealed. And
Okay.
so, like as things went on, it's like there's been a myriad of like complete contradictions and different stuff. And
Mhm.
so basically, on March 8th, it's roughly about a month after the execution, and is article in the Aberdeen paper, and it says Rockwood shot twice in the back of her head, according to legal documents. And so I went and was looking at the paper, and the interesting part gets to get a little ways into it, and it says in about the fifth paragraph down, it's like according to an affidavit filed in support of a search warrant, Rockwood's death was ruled a homicide after her autopsy revealed, quote, two entrance wounds, and keep in mind I said, quote, two entrance wounds consistent with bullet holes located in the back of the skull of the human remains. And
Hmm.
so affidavit and request for a search warrant. Interesting is, I went there, and at one point in time, I was looking just to see what's like, where's the ones with the most pages that I can print out. And so it's like not really even knowing what I was doing. I was just like, just kind of just shotgunning it. So I went
Mhm.
and was looking, and I was looking for anything that gave any kind of detailed description. And so, like one of the pages I got was uh, affidavit and request for a search warrant. So everything that they're talking about, I had this in just a month or so. Was a short while later, suddenly this document is now sealed, but I got to it in advance of them sealing it.
And what did it say again?
And so the according to the paper, it says, quote, two entrance wounds consistent with bullet holes located in the back of the skull of the human remains. Now, or I should say unquote. I spent a lot of time doing journalism throughout high school and whatnot.
Mhm.
And one thing I know is like if you put it in quotes, it has to be exact that way in there. That
Mhm.
what I just quoted does not exist anywhere in this form. Of the 7 pages, nothing like that reads the same, even slightly. And so, but one of the other things is it addresses something interesting that took place well in advance of this. And so I will just start reading the next 4 paragraphs under it was Special DCI Agent Brandon Neitzert's. It was his report, and
Okay.
it was filed on February 20th of 2018. This says Deputy Schreier, he's from out of Day County, explained that at approximately 2 p.m., Deputy Hoven, who is also out of Day County, made verbal contact with Rockwood through the door of her apartment. However, she refused to open the door, citing the fact that she was not dressed. Deputy Hoven indicated he was cautious of forcing entry into the apartment for a bench warrant. I don't really know what the bench warrant was for, so he exited the apartment complex to wait for Rockwood to leave. Upon exiting, he took note of a large, dark Dodge Dakota, South Dakota license number 3F8250 parked in front of the complex. And so, like, here it is, you have a bench warrant the day she was murdered. You have the deputy going there, talking to her on the other side of the door, and then just abandoning it completely. He doesn't talk with her, he just goes. He's gone.
Mhm.
And so it says no further contact with Rockwood was made, and at 1:35 a.m., Watertown 911 dispatch received a 911 call from a paper delivery driver for the Aberdeen American News reporting heavy smoke and fire showing at the apartment complex, which is like 1:35. And so it's interesting because like I've kept everything for this
It
ever since.
was weird the way that they were. Okay, that means that they were after her. If they had a warrant for her, they were after her in some way.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it was, they needed to serve a warrant, but
And
because
they
he
were
just,
and she, yeah, they were trying to mess with her in some way, and she wasn't letting
yeah,
them in.
yeah, and so he just
There
up
was
and,
something wrong there.
yeah, he just up and left, and so it's like, that's some really top-notch South Dakota police work. But
Yeah.
basically, in the first article that ever came out, that uh, it basically said that this Aberdeen American reporter said that he could see a glow as he crossed into the Day County line, and this was at 1:30. According to this, it was at 1:30. He called at 1:35.
Mhm.
So he's crossing into Day County line, and I went on my own, and I drove and did my trip meter. It is exactly 4 miles from the Day County line to the location of the fire. And so you have that distance. In the midst of that, there is a hill. It's like elevated for trains. So it's about a 18 to 20 foot hill that he would also have as an obstruction to have to seal. And so
Mhm.
he has this whole thing going in. It's 4 miles away, and it's like you're just going off a glow. You're not going to call off of a glow
Mhm.
first and foremost. So, but this is what they said as he's crossing the Dade County line. So
Mhm.
this is at 1:35 at night, according to when they got the call. And so, as this continues, it says based on the information, and this is once again Special Agent Brandon Neitzert's
Mhm.
documentation. I contacted DCI Special Agent Conrad, ATF Special Agent Hogendorn, and South Dakota Deputy Fire Marshal Steve Harford to assist me with the investigation. I instructed Deputy Schreier, due to the fact that he felt may already be criminal activity involved, he should be preparing an affidavit in support of a search warrant request to obtain a search warrant before we begin the process at the scene.
Mhm.
And I mentioned the fire took place at 1:35 a.m. So that's a very, very key element to this. And so then the next paragraph it's actually at the bottom of the page. It says investigators continued to attempt, and this is after they went through and like the next few paragraphs are all about trying to locate Rodriguez. But this is 4 paragraphs further. Investigators continued to attempt to excavate the fire debris from Rockwood's apartment, finding charred human remains in the southeast corner living room at approximately 3:44 p.m. So we're in a very minuscule 4-plex apartment, and they couldn't locate the body for
all those
roughly
time.
about 13 hours later.
Yeah, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. A meticulous examination of the debris around the body uncovered what appeared to be a bullet hole wound above the deceased's right eye in the forehead area. Paper says she was shot twice in the back of the head. This document says she was shot once above the forehead because it wouldn't say a bullet hole if it was an exit wound.
So there's a lot of discrepancies, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yep. And so, but in and amongst the many discrepancies is it goes further because like I've talked to like with the time frame of everything with the you have the 135 fire call. In a separate document, it lists that Rodriguez and his so-called accessory, his name is Gaber Glover, and Glover's name didn't come out till Halloween of this year, or that's when I discovered it. It came out in August, but Glover's name had never been mentioned. And suddenly but Glover just happens to be one of the alibi witnesses. So they say they have these two on video surveillance at the Holiday Kesslers in Aberdeen, and I did the trip meter from the location to where the fire took place to this specific Holiday convenience store. It's 28.8 miles, and so roughly you're looking at the call going in at 1:35 and one of the things that even our Attorney General mentioned was that accelerants were used in this fire. Yet you have the pictures that I've taken repeatedly, and only a quarter of this building burned.
Like it was just she was targeted. It looked like a targeted fire. Yeah.
Everything else.
I mean, how stupid do they think? How stupid do they think the average people are? This is why I mean. It's not that people don't. It's not that people. I don't. It's not that people don't know this is a bunch of garbage. These investigations. It's just that they're scared. Don't you think?
Oh yeah.
It's not like people are stupid in South Dakota. It's just
they're so busy in their own lives that they don't really pay that close attention.
Well, and some people didn't know her personally like you did, and have all this information. But I mean, come on. I mean, how stupid do they think we are? Like, all your details don't make sense. You know what?
Yeah, and this whole thing is
what
being
a
sold
joke.
as a domestic by every stretch of the measure. Everything that they put in the paper frames him as like this really abusive guy, and so it's like I don't know the nature of their relationship completely, but at the same time, it's like so I've spoken with a firefighter who the night was one of the first two in Andover to respond.
Okay.
And he said when he got there, this is where it gets interesting. When he got there, he's like the fire was out of control. Like I mean the flames were absolutely huge, and I'm like that completely contradicts everything I'm thinking about this. And so it's like
why does it contradict?
Yeah, it's like I mean because looking at how little of that building burned.
Oh yeah,
It's like I mean you go and you look, it's like it's a quarter of the building, the top. Like pinning the top left quadrant is the only part that actually burned.
Yeah.
So talking
it doesn't
with him,
make any sense.
Here's where, and so this is 1:35 when he supposedly gets the call, or even so he's got to respond. He proceeds to tell me that Andover has 20 firefighters on its crew. Only 4 of them live in the town of Andover because it's such a small community. 16 of them have to come from like more rural areas, farmers. So all these guys are putting on their clothes and whatnot to get the Andover fire station to go battle this fire.
Mm-hmm.
The Andover fire station is literally 40 yards from the building that burned. And so,
so it doesn't make sense that it took them that long to get there?
It does in the sense with those guys because they live in town, so it's like,
yeah.
But he tells me I was the one who called mutual aid because mutual aid was necessary because of how big the fire was. And you look at Andover's fire truck, it's an ancient looking, it's a tub of metal on wheels, but it puts out some fires, I guess. And so he's the one calling mutual aid. And so you have this raging fire with accelerants, mind you. You only have a quarter of this building gone. Mutual aid came from the towns of Pierpont, the town of Bristol, and the town of Groton. Each one of those is 10 miles away. So he's probably got 3 minutes in after the 135 call to make the call for mutual aid. Then those guys have to receive the call, get dressed, get to the station, get geared up, get on the truck, and drive 10 miles, and then combat the fire. And yet, here we are, a quarter of the building burns. And so it's like, with the accelerants, it's like, so the entire thing doesn't add up. And so
what you're saying is they should, it doesn't add up,
That building should be on the ground completely.
Oh, yeah, because it took, right. The whole thing doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the bar owner in the first, session of the Aberdeen paper said, he basically made a comment about, thought he had heard someone being, pulled out of the basement. And there were, according to all the stuff in the media, she was the only one living there. And so, but what I had since learned is that there was a gentleman who was named Sarge who had been, evicted a month prior. And so, but it was interesting because you have the Aberdeen paper, and I've sent you the pictures on Messenger. And so, and the funny thing is you have the picture that they had the first story, and you can see everything, 2 firefighters, and you can see through the bottom window. And it wasn't until I expanded out that bottom window that it all made sense. It's like that fire was huge when they got there, but it wasn't on the inside. I have pictures where it shows, this is months after the fact, where they're pulling clothes out of the wreckage of the home, and I believe it's Tawny's and her daughter's because it's all bright pink and kind of cutesy looking, and all those clothes are pristine looking.
The inside wasn't burned; it's more the outside.
It was strictly the outside.
Weird.
And it's and the one thing that I in talking with our mutual friend about the situation in Platte was that she had heard that the children, when they arrived at the funeral home, the bodies weren't burned. And I'm like, so this was just something that I took
it's
from
just
our conversation.
So they were saying they weren't burned, but yet the one report said charcoal bodies. The whole thing doesn't make sense.
Okay. I mean, that was for the situation in Platte. And here, it never, it basically talks about her body being burned, but it's when this guy, because I had 2 firefighters, volunteer firefighters. Between the 2 of them, they have 87 years of firefighting experience, and both of them are that. I've shown them the photos that I've gathered on my own. I've taken them on my own, and they're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
The way that it's that whole thing.
Anybody, and it doesn't. You don't even have to be a firefighter for that to make sense. I mean, it's just.
And so it's
But I want to try to wrap this up because I don't want it to be too long of a video. But just go ahead but try to wrap it up if we could.
Yeah. So basically, with everything, why is it important that the inside wasn't burned? Because you can look through the bottom window, you can see a pristine white wall with framed photos on it.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's in the messenger stuff. And so it's like all these different photos. It's like, why would that be important? And I was like, they would need the majority of that building to remain structurally sound to maneuver if they were maneuvering anything. I have a person who I've spoken with who witnessed a month in advance a pair of brothers who were removing the railing out of the building and insulation.
Why do you think they were doing that?
Insulation burns.
Oh. Huh.
And so it's like, and so it's like, I've talked with a couple different people that I don't want to bring their stories out too much because it's significant what they know. And so it's like,
You think that they were somehow setting up this
yeah,
thing
I believe
amongst
this was basically established well in advance.
that they were gonna
like,
do this fire and kill her.
Yeah. Because it's like, because you have basically
You got her kids taken away, so the kids weren't there, and then you got the police coming and trying to bring her somewhere or serve her something, and then all of a sudden she's dead the next day. Like a lot of things point to this, she was targeted in every way.
Yeah, and it's like if you look at those two daughters, say they go into foster care when they're 6 and 4, they're still worth $1 million to the state for that duration of time, because as soon as these kids hit 18, they're not worth anything. So they basically just restock.
Oh, that's just weird. Okay, well, I don't want to wrap this up right now because it's just been it's a lot of details, so I don't want to overwhelm people. But yeah, and it's just overwhelming for me too. But okay, well, thank you for sharing this. And then if you want to do another video, you can let me know. But let's just wrap this up for tonight. And
oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing this because. And then hopefully, I encourage more people to come forward and say what they know. And if they don't have my telephone number, I'm going to say it as 651-767-2892. Did you want people to be able to contact you or not?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's like,
okay, I'll leave your telephone number at the end of this video if that's okay. Okay, because some people might know. And when is this? And they're about to have a court case against somebody. They're trying to say.
And this trial is next month.
Next month, yeah. And they're trying to say this guy did it, and nobody thinks this guy did it. And there's witnesses apparently that have proof that he didn't do it, but
a large percentage of people think that he did it. But
think he did it, or
but that's because of how the state is.
Oh, but then there was a lot of witnesses that say that he didn't do it. Okay.
It's like I just through the stuff that I've uncovered, it's like it would have nothing adds up. It just there's so much stuff that like to be able to have the photos and everything. It's like it displays it. It's like it's there. You can see.
Yeah. It's just nobody does investigative work in the state. And so anyway, I'm gonna let you go and I'm gonna finish this video, but I'm gonna put your number on the end of this video and maybe if that's okay then. And thanks so much.
I had was for like I don't know if you want to cut off the video or not, but you had talked about a 3-way call.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We can talk about that when I'm done. Because I feel that, I'll just say this right on the video. I have contacted the FBI, and I feel that this whole state needs to be investigated for public corruption. So I've sent information to D.C., to Trump, about this, and I have also reported this to FBI offices because I feel the whole state of South Dakota needs to be investigated for something called public corruption. When I talked to the FBI, they said, if you're just talking about murder type things, that's not in our jurisdiction. That's a state thing. But if you're talking about all kinds of other things that you're talking about, now that does involve the FBI. That's what
Yeah.
they told me. So that's what we're attempting to do. So that's what myself and others are attempting to get the FBI involved to investigate the whole state for public corruption because we feel that's what needs to happen, right?
Yeah, and it's
Because
like
it's a
I
whole,
said, it's like,
it's not just one incident. There's several, and it's all connected.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I can think of like one of the first experiences I had was when I arrived in South Dakota. I decided to finish my degree at Northern State University, and the most influential day I ever had was the day I was walking to one of my classes, and I looked to the right, and there's police tape all over the place, and it come to find out there was a German professor by the name of Morgan Lewis who, according to everything that made the media, shot himself in the back of the head and had the wherewithal to toss his gun in the dumpster.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and that was at NSU. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that was at Northern.
Okay, well we won't get into that today, but we can
No,
but this is just we're starting conversations because this is really frightening. I mean, this is terrifying. And
yeah,
I mean, I have a lot more to share about my whistleblower story, but right now I'm focusing on some of these things because I've been contacted by, after I was on the video with Laura, I got contacted by a lot of people in South Dakota. So I'm doing more videos on that right now. But okay, well, thanks, Paul, for sharing, and we'll be in
yeah, and
contact.
like as far as like just whatever we just said, like whatever we can do to arrange that three-way call, because a lot of it's like having the documentation and the photos in front of them to be able to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, we have to get that. Yep, yep.
yeah. So
Okay,
it's
okay. Well, I'm gonna let you go, and then we can talk more about that.
okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So if you want to get in contact with Paul, if you have any information on any of these things that we're talking about, his number is 605-360-6317. Okay. And my number is 651-767-2892. And my email is mwtech2008 at gmail.com. This is really terrifying. This is terrifying. I mean, I'm scared to do these videos, but I feel like it's never, we can't solve anything if it's not talked about. So anyway, so basically this was uncovering the Andover crime and a couple other fires and mysterious murders they all involve fires. And then he was uncovering that one organization, a couple organizations that's been abusing children in South Dakota. So that's Auroura Plains, and then that developmental facility in Redfield. So that's basically what this video is about today. And so I hope that was informative, and I'm gonna hopefully I'll get some responses here. Thanks.